All right, well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the African American Mayors Association Future Leaders Fellowship Program Capstone presentations. This year, AAMA welcomes 6 undergraduate students from across the nation to learn about the functions of local government, receive hands-on training, and conduct research centered around current policy issues. These students got the opportunity to spend 5 weeks in our nation's capital and 1 week in one of our member mayor's office, visiting cities such as Seattle, Baltimore, Long Beach, Little Rock, Montgomery, and St. Louis, Missouri. Over the summer, the fellows collaborated with each other on formulating a strategic plan.
Is Darian frozen, you guys?
I think so.
Yes.
Yes, it's frozen. It's frozen. It's
Frozen.
fine now.
Yeah, we're back.
Oh, okay. It froze. I didn't.
It's back now.
Okay, sorry about that. Kennedy, you can go ahead and present.
Okay. Is everyone able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kennedy Johnson. I am a senior political science major, sociology minor on the pre-law track from the Bronx, and I attend Morehouse College. And today, Madison, Layla, and I will be discussing the importance of equity within affirmative action.
And greetings. I am Layla Fields, a third-year political science scholar from Chicago, Illinois, and I currently attend Florida A&M University.
And Madison Corzine, who was unable to join us today on the Zoom, but she did send in a video for her part of the presentation. She is a junior political science major on the pre-law track, and she attends Spelman College from Dallas, Texas. Okay. So before we start our presentation, I wanted to start it off with a quote from Nelson Mandela, which is, "Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world." And this quote encompasses what our group stands on in terms of researching for our presentation. So in order to understand the direct problem within this issue, we decided to do a needs assessment. So our needs assessment, from this, we figured out that the ban on affirmative action devastated communities of people, but there were also people in support of this ban. Our research provided by the Pew Research Center shows in detail how Americans view different factors that are considered in college admissions on the scale of it being major, minor, or not a factor at all. So as you can see on the graph, high school grades are seen as a major, but being first gen or community service involvement are not. And those factors are just as important, if not more important, than just high school grades because it can provide a holistic viewpoint on a candidate. So our overview, I'll be discussing what affirmative action is, how it has been applied, and why it is important today. By definition, affirmative action refers to policies and practices aimed at increasing the representation of certain groups in areas where they have been historically underrepresented. Typically, these policies focus on groups that have faced discrimination or systemic barriers based on characteristics such as race, gender, ethnicity, or disability. Affirmative action can take various forms, such as preferential hiring, quotas, outreach programs, and educational initiatives with the goal of promoting equality and diversity within institutions and workplaces. Our group specifically wants to emphasize affirmative action in respect to education. We believe that affirmative action has helped create an equal playing field in terms of ensuring that all aspects of a candidate are considered. So why is affirmative action important today? Affirmative action plays a part in combating the 400-year socioeconomic gap that has been displayed through America between people of color and our counterparts. Most people wish to seek racial and other cultural neutral alternatives, but by doing this, we ignore the importance of race, sexual orientation, and other components that make up someone. In today's time, more than ever, when our democracy is at stake, we as a group found it crucial to provide a supplemental resource to affirmative action. And then reading off the slide, admissions procedures that are based solely on race would worsen already existing disparities and fail to acknowledge the particular difficulties that Native American, Black, and Hispanic students face during the application process. These strategies run the danger of widening the gap between communities of color and equitable opportunity by downplaying the importance of race. And then now we'll be watching a video from Madison Corzine. 1 second.
Hi everyone, it's Madison. So sorry I couldn't be with you guys today. I am currently, as we speak, on the way back to DC to participate and compete in the UNCF Pathways to Pitch competition. So wish me luck. But since my screen isn't working on Zoom, I'm just going to be talking to you guys. And the first thing I'm going to be speaking on is the legal precedent behind the repealing of affirmative action. And as the end of the Supreme Court's term in 2022, the Supreme Court upended the established equal protection law with its decision in the SFFA versus Harvard and the SFFA versus UNC case, effectively eliminating the use of affirmative action in college admissions. And the court's decision disregards prior precedent, which is part of the reason why it is so deeply contested in minority circles all over the United States in terms of the way that it seemed to come out of nowhere and the way that it seemed antithetical with the way the Supreme Court was ruling in terms of progressivism. As well as the fact that it just seemed generally out of line with what we know to be true about admissions processes. And when you don't have any fail safes like affirmative action, there's a vastly large amount of Black and brown students who are disqualified and, pushed to the side for favor of the white majority. And due to the incredibly polarizing and frankly unpopular overturn of affirmative action, the Supreme Court, like I said, has come into question in regards of the ethics of lifetime terms and essentially the ethics of what it looks like to have the majority controlling the entire decisions of the federal government for the entirety of their lives. And since the ruling came away from the highest court in the land, it becomes very, very difficult for us as a group to find ways to reinstate it in any way without the threat of being sued or having legal action taken against us, because in all reality, what we're attempting to do, although it is right and we stand on the right side of history by attempting to do it, it is not supported by the government. So let's move on to facts and figures. The recent repealing of affirmative action has negatively impacted Black students who have the intentions to pursue higher education, like I said. In terms of numbers, we're looking at a rate of change in negative 5.3% in the 2021 and 2022 school year to, and this is going to sound crazy, but we did the math, it is negative 914.38% in the 2022-2023 school year. Of course, you'll notice that these years are the years after COVID. So COVID is not one of the things that we have to look out for in terms of making sure that our studies are unbiased, but we wanted to make sure that we, show that there is a demonstrably increasing decline of Black students enrolling in higher education facilities, including both 4-year and 2-year institutions. And now that I've talked about the historical context, now that I've talked about the facts and figures, I want to touch on the historical context. And with the historical applications of what affirmative action really means for Black people and what it means in terms of using it as a chance for us to have reparations, it's really important that we remember that we need to try to center a new approach to affirmative action with that in mind. So again, with the historical implications and context of previously denying Black students educational and scholarship opportunities, it is imperative, like I said, to formulate a resolution with knowledge that the previous installment of affirmative action vastly benefited white women rather than other minority groups. This means that we have to remove the word equality from our dictionaries because it does not serve us in the way we intended it to when affirmative action was first brought into existence. The word of focus now is equity. Equity ensures not only fairness in terms of educational opportunities, but reparations, like I said, for the fact that Black families have been historically and economically set back by slavery, Reconstruction, redlining, and all the other practices maintained to deny the Black family the American dream. And so with that historical context and some of the numbers involved in our study, I really hope that I've added to your broader spectrum of why reinstating affirmative action is incredibly important. Again, thank you guys so much for showing my video because I really wanted to be here. But on to the proposal.
Okay. And this is just an overview of what Madison was talking about in her video. So this is the legal precedent, and these are the facts and figures and historical context. And now we'll be moving on to our proposal. So modeled after multiple successful statewide programs in the Northeast and East Coast, such as New York City's Small School of Choice, which was created and promoted citywide as a way to enhance the educational experience with low impoverished communities, as well as Check and Connect, which is a dropout prevention program that also focuses on the retention rate for high school students with learning, emotional, and behavioral disabilities, and the great work they have already done to keep hundreds of Black students and students of color together and provide resources that have been vital to combat the disbandment of affirmative action. Our new findings in reinstating and improving affirmative action would establish a diversion program that includes education and employment services, parenting skills, and mental health services on a nationwide level. It also addresses the basic needs of the individual and the dissection of other societal impacts that can explain various gaps in education and opportunity. And through our programming, also offer resources, services, and training to meet each student's unique needs.
All right, everyone. So greetings once again. I am Layla Fields, a third-year political science scholar from Chicago, Illinois, and I attend Florida A&M University. So now the biggest question is, how will this be broadcasted? So we have implemented this hashtag, reinstate affirmative action, and this straightforward hashtag serves as the face of our social media campaign. Additionally, it summarizes the mission to restore affirmative action. The hashtag will be broadcasted through Instagram and TikTok via slideshows. Next slide. And so these are the influencers that we use. So we decided that they would be best fit to broadcast the reinstatement of affirmative action because these young women create fun, personable content while also making sure to advocate for social justice. They take advantage of their large platforms to help with immense outreach. So we have Monet McMichael, Clark, and we have Mackenzie Taylor. And this is also important because we are in the age of Gen Z and Gen Alpha. And we're pretty much everything is internet and digital. So the use of social media is a big thing as far as advocacy for the reinstatement of affirmative action. Next slide. Also, the Congressional Black Caucus is an impactful group of Black leaders. We chose to write our letter to them because of the power that minority leaders have when united. Additionally, because these Black leaders hold seats in Congress, they further have the ability to make crucial decisions geared towards reinstating affirmative action. Next slide. So this is just one of many graphics / posts that we will be posting to social media. So this one is how to effectively advocate. So number one, posting on social media. So posting statistics, information, and facts about a topic on social media platforms will outreach to followers and even the public. Writing letters, so reaching out to local, state, and federal lawmakers via letter puts your passion of an issue in writing, and it is one of the many forms of direct lobbying. Protesting, so engaging in peaceful protests outside of local, state, and federal lawmakers' offices raises awareness of a pressing issue, And this also assists in negotiating for a better outcome. And then have the conversation. In order to progress, uncomfortable conversations need to be had. Through these conversations, both sides can be seen and deliberated. Next slide. So another graphic that we have is myth versus fact. So a myth is affirmative action is a policy that does not treat all races equally. This is wrong. And then a fact is affirmative action was set into place to leverage the discrepancies in college admissions and employment. It paved the way for disadvantaged groups based on their race, gender, nationality, and sexual orientation. Next slide. So then we also have the problem and outcome slide. So the problem is the reversal of affirmative action. And one of the 4 outcomes is class-based affirmative action. So singling out households in disproportionately lower incomes, and then widening the gap. Minority students will now have to work unnecessarily harder, competing with privileged college-ready students, and then removing the percentage. Most universities were required to accept a certain percentage of minority students. Without affirmative action, that does not necessarily matter anymore. And then also creating a divide. With the removal of this program, racial hostility arises as students compete for limited spots in higher education. Next slide. And then finally, how to help reinstate affirmative action. Step 1, do your research. Make sure your sources are reliable in order for you to voice the issue correctly. Step 2, participate in protests, social media movements, and move in solidarity. Step 3, lobby to your local representatives, state legislators, and federal lawmakers. They will hear and see you. Hashtag reinstate affirmative action. And just to touch on this again, this is a very important slide because, like I said before, we're Gen Z and Gen Alpha. It really starts with the youth. Our voices are heard the most because we are the most influential group of people. So yes, this is important, broadcasting this on your social media, knowing how to lobby, and then making sure that you do your research and your facts are straight. Next slide. And then thank you for your time and thank you for listening to our presentation about the reinstatement of affirmative action. And please let us know if you guys have any questions.
Thank you, Layla and Kennedy. Now I'll open it up to anyone if you all have any questions or comments about their presentation. It was great. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to say amazing job also. Great presentation.
I want to say they did a great job as well. Awesome job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. I don't see any questions. So if not, we'll move on to group 2. And Brianna, you can go ahead and present your screen.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So the title of our presentation is Beyond Bars, A Vision for Effective Rehabilitation. I am Naya Crawford, a senior legal communications major, French minor from Mobile, Alabama, and I currently attend Howard University.
Hello, my name is Brianna Jackson. I am a senior political science major, sociology minor from St. Louis, Missouri, and I attend Howard University.
And good afternoon. My name is Ashley Wong. I am a rising sophomore political science student from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and I attend Florida State University.
So the United States stands out globally for its high incarceration rates, with sentences typically 5 times longer than international norms. This system is notorious for its high rates of repeat offenses, especially within Black and Brown communities, largely attributed to inadequate rehabilitation efforts. This issue is especially prevalent in the state of New Mexico. The two major issues are lack of educational programs implemented and limited vocational training options that are available. Next slide, please. I believe to understand the scope of the issue, we must ask, what is recidivism? Recidivism is the tendency of a convicted criminal to reoffend or the act of a person repeating an undesirable behavior after they have experienced negative consequences of that behavior or have been trained to extinguish it. A U.S. Department of Justice analysis of recidivism rates in 24 states concluded that 82% of individuals released from state prisons were rearrested at least once during the 10 years following their release. Within 1 year of release, 43% of formerly incarcerated individuals were rearrested. Next slide, please. We also want to know, what is rehabilitation? Rehabilitation is the action of restoring someone to health or normal life through training and therapy after imprisonment, addiction, or illness. Next slide, please. So what does effective rehabilitation look like? One is providing educational opportunities. This includes literacy programs, high school equivalency classes, and vocational training to improve job prospects post-release. Second is providing vocational training. This is offering skills, training, and certification programs that prepare individuals for employment in various fields, such as construction, culinary arts, or technology. Three, providing healthcare resources. The purpose of this is to address underlying substance abuse issues through counseling, therapy, and support groups to reduce the likelihood of relapse and reoffending. It is to provide access to mental health professionals for assessment, treatment, and ongoing support for individuals with mental health disorders. And it is to receive adequate health care to reduce the rate of misdiagnosis within prison facilities. Four, providing reentry plans. This includes access to housing, employment, healthcare, and community support services upon release. And last, providing community-based support. This is to facilitate connections to community organizations, mentors, and peer support groups to enhance social integration and reduce isolation once people are released from prison. Next slide, please. So how do these issues affect New Mexico? Based on research done by Data Pandas, New Mexico is ranked 6th among states with the highest recidivism rates. Currently, 49.1% of formerly incarcerated individuals are convicted again of a crime and return to prison with the chances of a longer sentence than previously served. The New Mexico Corrections Department reports 76% of inmates were in an educational, cognitive, vocational, or college program in the fiscal year of 2019. However, educational and rehabilitative program varies widely across correctional facilities, and not all inmates have access to the most effective programs for reducing recidivism. In fact, the availability of vocational education is limited. So for example, welding courses are only offered at 2 facilities in the state of New Mexico, and the Northwest New Mexico Correctional Center offers no vocational education programming at all. Traditional educational programming is also not available to all inmates. And while all facilities offer some type of adult basic education, GED credentials, preparation, and college courses, there's insufficient staffing in these education departments. So that results in long waiting lists for core educational programming. Next slide, please. So with all of this information, we wanted to know what was implemented already policy-wise to address these issues. So in the recent years, there have been criminal justice bills signed by Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham. And the first one was reduced sentencing for juveniles. This bill was signed to ban juvenile life sentences without parole, as well as creating parole eligibility for those who are serving long sentences for crimes they committed as children. The second was eliminated penalties for low-income individuals. This bill intended to end the practice of suspending driver's license due to court debt, failure to pay, or failure to appear. The passing of this bill reinstated over 300,000 licenses that were suspended back to individuals in the state of New Mexico. And it also provided a way for current debt to be forgiven. And then last, new law enforcement training was signed in April of this year, actually, to strengthen the standards to be a licensed law enforcement officer and the grounds for decertification. So although all these bills are great efforts in taking a step forward towards criminal justice reform, they all fail to address the current state of rehabilitation in New Mexico prison facilities and how to act against these negative conditions. Outside of those listed, there has not been any policy proposed in New Mexico to improve the root causes of recidivism. Next slide.
So when it comes to addressing these issues centered around recidivism, one of the biggest issues is the issue of improper educational programming. So currently right now, the Corrections Department Education Bureau provides inmates with educational opportunities that are only limited to parenting courses, ESL, and employment-related courses. You may be asking, what's the issue? Well, the issue is these don't fully represent the recipe needed in order to decrease these rates. These inconsistencies include, one, they're not entirely inclusive, excuse me. All inmates do not possess the physical capabilities to learn a hard skill trade and therefore require more development of softer skills, whether that be communication, time management, or any of these skills that offer something that you can take with your life with you. Additionally, they're educationally limiting. The educational system in place only provides education up to achieving a high school diploma. However, today's workforce requires higher than a high school diploma for most entry-level positions. Next slide, please. Additionally, with the issue of vocational training programs, while provided in the state, most of these vocational programs offered also lack some of the fundamental needs to operate successfully. For example, one, they're disproportionate. Vocational training opportunities can vary widely between different prisons, but some of them, like mentioned before, only offer limited amount of programming. Some may include carpentry or welding or even culinary arts, but others offer none at all. Secondly, they're inaccessible. Inmates' access to vocational trainings can be limited by factors such as behavioral history, sentence length, or even the availability of program slots. This may result in unequal opportunities for skill development amongst the incarcerated. Next slide, please. So, the question we must ask ourselves is, what needs to be done? Well, just to put it briefly, it needs a comprehensive, equitable look in both regards of educational programming and vocational programming. Next slide, please. So, as of 2018, these were the courses that were offered in the prison system, in the New Mexico prison system, excuse me. For example, the Eastern New Mexico University at Roswell only provides an Associate of Art degree in Business Administration or University Studies. As you can see here, this is not a very diverse course for those who may want to study something out of business administration and university studies. Not to mention, 53% of state funding goes towards providing this educational opportunity. To put that figuratively, that's $171,000 going to Eastern New Mexico, only providing associate's degrees in both of these majors. Secondly, with 27% of the state funding going to Messalins Community College, they only provide associate degrees in liberal arts and associate of applied science. Again, not very diverse for those who may have other interests. And thirdly, 20% of state funding also goes to the New Mexico State University, which only, once again, provides applied computer applications and only offered at women's facilities. So the question is here, for those that may want to get different degrees, whether that be in theology, library studies, or anything else, what is offered to them? Next slide, please. So, for example, here's a bit of a case study. So Cadell Cavet is 52 years old. He is in prison. He's been here for about over 10 years now. And there is a new implementation in the prison system for incarcerated individuals to get education. However, he has a passion for journalism. He's done work in the prison with Nash News, with the Nash News Network, and has therefore been able to act on his passions while in prison. However, when it comes to getting a degree in journalism, he's unable to, because the highest degree that is offered is a degree in theology. Now, Cavet does not have a passion in theology. but is therefore only limited to such an access because of what is being provided. Next slide, please. So the question is here, what is our approach? Well, essentially what we must do is go to the heads of department. We start with Governor Michelle Lewin Grissom. We must call on her, ask her the essential steps that we must take in order to change these livelihoods for these incarcerated individuals in an attempt decrease the rates of recidivism. Secondly, we must call in New Mexico Corrections Department, which oversees the Educational Bureau, which oversees the vocational and educational programming for incarcerated individuals. Next slide, please. So here's a look on something that we need to have implemented, That is the Second Chance Pell Experiment. It was launched in 2015. It is federally funded and provides need-based Pell Grants to incarcerated individuals to allow them to participate in eligible post-secondary programs. They offer a variety in programming and therefore covers educational and vocational programming. So the question is, have they? Next slide, please. So a little bit of a backstory here. New Mexico actually tried to implement the Second Chance Pell Experiment, but the university that they tried doing it through, the Ashland University, had a bit of issue. They were $17 million in debt. They were cited in Ohio for transcript manipulation. They were fined $6 million for improper Pell packaging and return of Title IV funds, which essentially means that they were distributing Pell Grants on a 30-week schedule instead of the allocated 24-week calendar. What that means is the incarcerated individuals were not being able to get the money that they needed in order to pay for their schooling. So our question is, what can we do going forward? Well, with the proposal that we have here, one, with the federally funded program, two, to increase these educational and vocational programming, we hope that, one, if we can improve the educational plan, two, we can improve the vocational training, then we can decrease the rate of recidivism from 49.1% that it is currently at right now to 24% in the next 2 to 5 years. That's about half of what it is right now. So, thank you. Next slide, please.
So our social media campaign is centered around the hashtag Reform Voices. The purpose of our social media campaign is to amplify the voices of prisoners to activate change. To be the voice of those often unheard in prisons, we as advocates will push for prison reform, as our program initiatives are necessary for the betterment of not only prisons, but our community as a whole. Our topic focus areas of both of our social media platforms that we will be using, both Instagram and TikTok, will focus on areas such as healthcare, educational programs, vocational training for prisoners, prisoners' rights, prison conditions, alternative sentencing, and reintegration into society. Sorry about that. So our Instagram Reform Voices will highlight our focus initiatives, which is educational programming and vocational training. It will also highlight informative updates on prison reform through our Did You Know series, which will also highlight informative updates, historical and notable advocates of prison reform, and we will also support fellow prison reform advocacy groups. Through our TikTok, it is important that we have interactive engagement with community members. We will also be conducting student interviews on college campuses regarding prison reform efforts. Through our Reform Voices Ambassadors Program, a chance for college students to spread awareness about prison reform on their campus and throughout their local communities. This is an amazing way for students to showcase their passions for advocacy by uniting us in our fight for prison reform. It is important to collaborate with fellow prison reform advocates, as we should spread awareness about this, as it is very important. A quote from Nelson Mandela, which is also featured on our Instagram at Reform Voices, is the degree of civilization in a society can be judged by entering its prisons. No one truly knows a nation until one has been inside its jails. We want to thank you for coming to our presentation. We hope our focus initiatives and passion for prison reform has ignited a flame in you to join us in our fight for the overall treatment of prisoners. We encourage you to stay informed and engage with your local elected officials. Your voice matters.
Good job, you all, and thank you for that. I'll open the floor now again for any questions or comments for group 2.
Again, great presentation, group 2. So my only question was for group 1 and 2. So based on your presentations, what was your number one thing you learned from this, from the research and investigation of your subject matter?
Okay, well, I guess I can start. So ours is about affirmative action. I originally thought that affirmative action only affected like education, but when I realized like and did more research, affirmative action pretty much affects everything. So people's jobs, living situations, like just the whole socioeconomic spectrum, it affirmative action affects.
And to just piggyback off of what Layla said, I think more so what I've learned is the difference between equality and equity. Through our research, I learned that there is a vast difference in something being equal and something being equitable. And that's something that my group was able to greatly uncover during our research.
And group 2?
I think one of the biggest lessons I learned, especially during this research, was actually how much state funding can be influential in the everyday lives of these individuals. I think, especially when we look at the prison system, I think most of our mentality goes to, oh, wow, what's the government doing about it? Like the federal government, why are they not funding these initiatives? But that starts on the local level. It's more than just when we go to the polls and we vote. It's more than just talking about our streetlights or the potholes that we have in the street, but essentially about the prison system, whether you have a family member or you know someone that's in that position. Most of that money that you're tax paying is going to these. And especially like I highlighted with just 50%, that's $171,000. You know what you could do with $171,000? That's quite a lot of money to be going to, just for these initiatives, especially when they're, just to echo something like Group 1 said, where there isn't enough equity being shown, where there isn't enough of funding or provision for these incarcerated individuals. So that's my lips. Thank you.
And just to piggyback off of Ashley, I think one thing that really stood out to me in this project was just a lack of urgency around the issue in general. It was surprising to see like not a lot of policy and not a lot of just conversation around effective rehabilitation, because you would think that, with as many prison facilities we have in the US, like everyone would want to see or not see each person return back to jail. So it was just interesting to see how everything connected, from healthcare to the education programs to the vocational programs to reentry plans, all of that, how that connects, and how that just affects people once they are released from prison. And to Mayor Jackson's question, was there any focus on the systemic use of prisons to curb violence and crime, as opposed to more programs that divert from crime at an early age or grade level? That's a great question. Were any of my group, anybody else in my group able to give perspective onto this? I have an idea, but I want to see if anyone else had anything to say.
Well, I think essentially tackling such an issue like that to stop crime at an early age, it goes back to education. So I think essentially, yes, we're focused on the educational and vocational training and programming within these prison systems, but essentially, how are we treating our students from a young early age? Are we showing them that there's more to life than just the community that they may grow up in or the access of opportunities they may have? So essentially, and I think that also goes back to funding as well. A big thing is if there is misallocation within these school districts and enough money is not provided for these students, again, with these educational programs, whether that be more recreational centers or just more opportunities for students to be involved outside of that, then there isn't much. There isn't much more that is really possible unless we start that implementation from an early age. So to answer your question, yes, there was a bit of a focus on that, but essentially, I think just focusing on the New Mexico prison system itself, we're seeing that now that we are here and now that we face these issues within the prison system currently, these are the steps that we need to take to ensure that though they've made these mistakes and though they may be incarcerated now, that we're implementing these strategies that will essentially show them a different path so that they are not, have that opportunity or don't take the opportunity to reoffend if presented the opportunity. I hope that answered a bit of the question. I don't know if Naya or Brianna had anything to add as well.
Yes, going back to Phyllis's question, I wanted to say one of the biggest takeaways from this project was definitely it was unfortunate to see the emphasis that is put on labor in prisons, but not necessarily the educational programming or the vocational training. And it's just unfortunate to hear that because it's important to have healthy reintegration into society. And to do that, the necessary education and vocational training has to be provided to the prisoner. So especially learning that, it definitely helps me like learn more and want to help actually outside of this presentation.
Thank you all for that. Did you all have a question?
Yeah, so this is Carlos. Great presentations. To group 2 about recidivism, I know that in Sing Sing High Security Prison in New York, they have a very robust program in partnership with, I believe, a City College and also New York Theological Seminary, where those persons who are incarcerated, many of them they're released. They come out with master's degrees, many of them with MPSs. Was there any deep dive in your group around what happens to those individuals when they do go back into society? Because I know it's easy for us to say, vocational programs will help. Just wanted to know, was there any deep dive into what happens when those individuals do go back into society with these degrees, and actually what happens, and were you guys able to access any voices with that lived experience coming out of some of those programs? And if not, I would love to connect you with Jose. If you're interested in digging deeper into that work, Jose is in New York City, works for the Children's Defense Fund. He has the master's in theology and also in I think it's public service, whatever the MPS is. But just want to know, was there any deep dive into individuals' lived experiences after having these degrees and going back into society, and the hurdles or the advantages that they face?
Thank you for that question, Carlos. Based on our research, we didn't find much of examples of this being played out in real time. And I think that's partially because it's not widely accepted into these facilities. I'm glad that New York is doing that. Like, that's something that needs to be done. But I feel like we can only see real time experiences or testimonies of what that's like if it's more infiltrated into different facilities throughout the US. So it's really, it's really just tackling the whole system in itself, reforming it so that it can look like what New York is doing now. And I would love to be in contact with Jose to understand more of the work that they do and hear about those testimonies as well.
Yeah, Jose, I think Jose went into the system at 17 or 18, just was released 3 years ago. And the Children's Defense Fund was one of the places that actually said, hey, we're not going to look at your record.
and rather we look at your skills and your potential, and he's doing really, really great work. So I'll connect you all with Jose. I'll put it in the chat. He loves to talk about his experiences, but also the hurdles that come along with that. So, and I did follow your IG page too. So good work.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Carlos. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, if not, I would like to open the floor back up to our fellows, just to share some final reflections. So fellows, I wanted to ask you all, what is your biggest takeaway from this summer? And I'll allow Ashley to answer first.
Okay, so great. Hi guys again. I think one of the biggest takeaways from this summer was, of course, the emphasis on Black leadership. I think I'm seeing that more, especially I'm not sure if most of you guys, well, pretty sure most of you guys have heard about the recent nomination for Vice President Kamala Harris. I think reflecting on my time at AAMA, it was a big takeaway to me to not only see Black leadership in play, how that is implemented in the everyday lives of course individuals, but also the support that comes from the community with Black leadership. I know for me, recently, I had the privilege of going to Baltimore, Maryland, to shadow Mayor Scott for a couple of days. And just having him take me through the city and speaking about most of the things that he's implemented, one of them being, of course, well, he bought these 2 hotels, to put it quite frankly. He bought these 2 hotels that were previously privately owned, and to turn that into facilities that now work for the homeless population. So these, with a partnership with local organizations, he can now go in and these individuals have a home. Not only do they have a home, but they're also given, talk about educational programming and vocational training, they also have the resources needed for them to integrate back into society. They also have a healthcare initiative not too far where they can go out and to ensure if they have drug issues, that is something that they're being worked on while they have somewhere to stay, while they have these resources being offered to them. And so to center it back around the question, one of my big takeaway is, of course, not only the emphasis on the Black leadership, but also the community and the community that we can change when we see these things. I'm a big advocate for hands on the ground, not just being able to say these things out loud, but also hands on the ground. So that was also a big thing. Again, another big takeaway, again, also from my mayor visit, was essentially the rebuilding of a local Black community, Johnston Square. Before it was broken down, there wasn't a lot of opportunities, and for them to rebuild back the library so that young students, I know Mayor Jackson previously mentioned about, education starting from the beginning, for these young students to have somewhere where they can say, this is our community, this is our home, this is where we're growing from, to see that emphasis being taken by Black leadership. That I think another big thing too is when you put that emphasis on Black leadership, you're also being represented by people who understand our needs, people who see us for who we are and say, this is what we need to do about it. And for an organization like AAMA that prioritizes these needs of these Black mayors, of these Black leaders, it doesn't get any better than that. I think especially being in on Capitol Hill, and where everyone is there trying to, make something for themselves, it is essential for us to have these organizations that say, I see you, I understand what you need, and I am willing to give that to you. And so that is something I will definitely take with me as I continue my career, collegiate career, and of course, career moving forward. I hope that was not too much of a spill, but yes, that really was my reflection. So thank you guys so much.
No, that was awesome. Thank you, Ashley, Brianna.
So I think one of my biggest takeaways, I came into the fellowship saying that I wanted to be able to see what necessary steps you need to take to make the change, because oftentimes we say what change we want to see, but we often don't know what steps are needed to make that change. So coming to the fellowship and learning more about public policy, it really helped me, see from the press release, the social media campaign, the strategic resolutions, it all plays a part in making change within our community. So being able to take that information with me and take it with me wherever I go is very important. And I think in regards to my mayor visit in Little Rock, Arkansas, Kendra Pruitt, the chief of staff for Mayor Scott, she taught me a lot. And one thing that she taught me about leadership was to be intentional with everything that you do. So when she was telling me things that she wanted me to know for my future, she said, before I get on any of my staffers or reflect on them, I always reflect on myself to see if I've given them all the necessary resources that I can. So teaching me how to be an intentional leader is how you make effective change. And I think bringing those lessons into like public policy is something that I definitely would do in the future.
Thank you for that, Brianna. Kennedy?
So my takeaway from the AAMA Fellowship, I truly learned how to be an advocate. As cliche as that sounds, I think through the fellowship, I was able to learn like how to seek effective change, as Brianna said, and learned how to be a change agent, whether in my community or like any room that I'm gonna step in the future. Throughout the fellowship, we spoke with people from different walks of life, their cultural backgrounds, and different careers. And I think all of that, they encompass what it truly means to be a leader. And what I most enjoyed was being able to listen to the roadmaps of how they got to where they are today, because it really shows that there's not one roadmap of what it takes to be successful. And just because you were brought up a certain way doesn't determine your overall outcome or trajectory. Another takeaway I had was just learning from my other fellows. I think being able to have conversations with them and be able to utilize sort of their resources from their past experiences at their institutions or just in their experiences being Black individuals, I think was rewarding for me. So those are my takeaways from this.
Thank you, Layla.
Okay, so in the beginning of this fellowship, I was probably the only one that was on the fence about going to law school. I think one of the biggest things that I learned from this fellowship is get the law degree. We learned about the different opportunities you can do without a law degree, but also the ones that you can do with. And also, while I was in Long Beach, I was encouraged by the city prosecutor, the mayor, and the city attorney themselves to go get the law degree. Another thing that I learned from my mayor, I went to Long Beach with Mayor Rex Richardson, is I learned about, he has these 3 phases. It's the self, wealth, and health phase. So right now I'm in the self phase. So basically I'm a sponge, like soaking up all this information. Basically be intentional, especially with the different connections that you get. If people say that they'll help you with whatever you need or they're there whenever you need it, take advantage of that. Like build those connections, a genuine connection, it'll go a long way.
Thank you for that, Layla. And last but not least, Naya.
Okay, so my biggest takeaway from this fellowship, honestly, was just the representation that we were all able to see with different meetings with the mayors, with different meetings with corporate partners. Because as I've told my fellows before, and even Darian, like I didn't know what public policy, or I didn't have a great idea of what public policy meant and how that could relate to me in my career. Outside of going to law school. So now that this fellowship has gave me a better understanding of it, I'm now ready to bring my influence and my leadership skills and just my impact into these different areas of policy and law. And I'm just ready to see how that looks. So that was one takeaway. And then even with my mayor visit in Seattle, one takeaway from that was the whole city itself. The mayor does a great job at being progressive and being inclusive, and he has no shame in just being like boldly Black. And I think that's important and something that I have to remind myself of, especially as I go into environments where they're not like HBCU is majority Black. I'm going to be, put into different environments with different other races of people, and I don't have to like dim myself or dim my Blackness. I can be bold and still like advocate for Black people in the positions that I'm in. So those are both my takeaways. And yeah, I'm just very appreciative of the opportunity. So I loved it.
Well, thank you. Thank you all for sharing your takeaways. It's definitely been a pleasure working with you all over the summer and seeing you all grow and just hearing your different experiences, especially with our member mayors. I'll open it up for any final remarks. Phyllis, if you have any, or any of our guests. But thank you all. It's definitely been a pleasure working with you all.
I always get teary when I hear the presentations and your takeaways while you guys were talking about what you learned and what your experience was. Jared was actually calling. So I have to call him back. He wants the link and the recording so he can see your presentations and see what you said. And so he's going to be so excited. We get 2 attorneys out of this group. And you know that Jared will hire you as an intern. They have offices all over the country and abroad. So I always use him also as a resource. So all I can say is great job again, Darian. Darian always does such an amazing job with the fellows and the interns. And it's going to be exciting to see the next stage in your lives once you graduate from college. For those of you who want to be Deltas, let me know. All the wonderful, even if you want to be an AK, we'll let Stacy and Stephanie know, and Quay, to help you in your journeys. And if you want to be an alpha man, you know Carlos is ready and willing and able. So, but that all being said, again, I want to say thank you to Darian. And she has some amazing babysitters for her future babysitters in the world. They'll be the smartest babysitters she could ever imagine. And you guys have done an amazing job, really. And I'm so glad you have enjoyed the experience. It is an investment in you. I personally did not have this type of experience, and most of the people on our staff never had this type of experience. And so it's great to hear how you enjoyed it, how you bonded, and you've seen the other fellows, the other groups, that they're still in contact with each other. Don't take each other for granted. I don't know if you know this, but Vice President Kamala Harris is Quay's line sister. They pledged together, AKA. So you never know where the other person is going to end up. So don't take each other for granted and keep in contact with each other. It will pay off in the long run. Believe me, you won't ever know where the person's going to end up. And make sure you keep in contact with your AAMA team on our side. Let us know all your accomplishments as you move forward in your career. If you need letters of recommendation, we have them ready and available for you on our letterhead. And it goes a long way, especially when you're at the White House. And no matter who is the president, it still goes a long way. Believe me, I have relationships on both sides of the fence. And so again, thank you. Thank you for appreciating the experience. It is a sweat equity and financial investment that we truly enjoy. And so don't be a stranger. Knock on our doors anytime you're in DC. Just stop by to say hi, or drop us an email to say, "Hey, just wanted to say hi." And we would greatly appreciate that. So thank you. Those are my words.
Thank you for that. Well, thank you all for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed everyone's presentations. That's the end. So have a great rest of your day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.